alcoholic, and I'm a member of the old Salem group. I'll tell you a little bit about how it was before I drank, while I drank, and how it's been since coming of age. I don't know when I took my first drink. My father was an alcoholic. My father was home drunk, beat my mother. He started on me. I was a young boy. He used to beat me till I stopped crying. Now, the reason I don't know I took my first drink, a lot of people do, but is because when I grew up, there was plenty of grapevines around. There wasn't all these houses around. They built them houses for the World War II veterans, you know what I mean? So there was everyone had gardens and farms and all that stuff. So, and everyone made shine. They made shine and home brew. And we didn't have any central heating. We had no toilet, no hot water. We had an outhouse and no storm windows and nothing like that. And all kind of cockroaches naturally, and rats and mice would be around. So you'd have cats and shit like that, and traps and stuff like that. So anyway, when it come time to go to bed, my mother would give us a shot at a home brew. I mean, the shine. And she said, "This will warm up your belly." And then she had a big bed warmer, and it would look like two big frying pans, and they was closed like that. They had hinges on them, and had a big handle like a broom, like it was thick. And she'd put it in between the sheets. She'd get the coal from the potbelly coal stove we had in the parlor, and she'd run them in there. You know what I mean? Then we'd jump in the bed. She'd throw all kind of one blanket on us, all we had. And then she'd throw newspapers on us and all kind of clothes. She'd get everything out of the closet and just throw fucking shoes, everything on it, just to keep them down. And that's why I don't know. But I do remember when I was a young boy, I took a pint of wine out from underneath the mattress. I took a couple of belts out of it, me and my sister Ann, and it warmed up my belly. And I staggered around and I pretended that I was drunk. I started to act like Daddy did, and I started to swear at my sister and throw things around and hit a stick and hitting the walls and all of this shit. And when I started drinking seriously, I ran away when I was 14, and then I come back, and then I got into a jam, and they sent me to a psychiatrist. I became quite violent. 3 people had witnessed what I had done during the course of events. Like I say, I was taking a psychiatrist, and I told him, he says, I don't remember. I says, I don't remember doing that. And I says, I was drinking. I don't remember nothing, And naturally, he believed me. I was only a kid, he believed me. And he says, well, there's some people when they drink, they have a form of amnesia. So apparently in those days, they didn't have all the medications they had today. You don't even have the DTs today, the horrors and like that. So he says there's some people when they drink, they have this form of amnesia. And when I say I had a blackout, I don't mean that I was falling down, staggering around drunk, nothing like that. You know what I mean? I mean, I could operate. I would give the appearance of being sober. I had no recollection at all of the things I did when I was in this condition. A lot of times I had gray outs. I would come out of the blackout and I'd remember a little bit and to go into it again. The gray out, but I'm talking about blackout. I would go, many a time I went to work. I didn't know I was at work. I didn't know anything about that I was at work. One time I come out of, I was at work and I'm sitting in a bench in a locker room with a guy, and I said, suffering Christ, look at the size of that spider. He says, where? I says, up there on the wall. It was huge. I said, it's huge. It was like as big as a human being. And it started to run. And he says, he was from Gloucester, and he says to me, he says, you're hallucinating, you're in the DTs. So that's because I wasn't drinking. And then when I drank, they would go away, like, you know what I mean? So anyways, like there was one time, there's 5 of us guys, we had a line in Peabody, and we was heading in town to Boston. I was sitting in the front of the car, the passenger side, drinking out of a beer glass that I'd taken from the bar. And the next thing I remember, I was hanging up the driver's side of the car door, and I woke up with a pain in my leg, and it was the driver of the car. He had my leg, and he was trying to break my leg. He was kicking up and pushed my leg down at the same time, and I kicked him in the face 3 or 4 times. The guys broke it up. I said to one of my friends, I said, "What did the crazy bastard do that for?" And he snapped at me, and he says, "It isn't him, you son of a bitch. It's you." He says, "For no reason at all. When he was driving a car, you took the beer glass, you smashed it in his face. We ended up in the middle of the rotary. We could have all been killed." Now, this is important. This is where the disease of alcoholism comes in. Because I didn't blame it on the fact that I was drinking that I did this. I blamed it on the fact that when we was kids growing up, this guy was a big guy, and he was a bully. I was always a skinny kid. And every time he seen me, he used to beat me up. So I must have remembered it when I was drinking and I got even with him. No matter what I did when I was drinking, I would justify my action and always protect my right to drink. Now, I didn't know this at the time. I was taught this in Alcoholics Anonymous from guys and girls that were drunks that came before me. They told me why I reacted the way I did. And it was on account of this subtle insanity, this an overt insanity of being obsessed with alcohol, and no one was going to take that away from me. And there was another time the cops came down the house to arrest me, and they had to break the door down and get me. Everyone screwed out of the house, and I was alone, and I went after them with a butcher knife. And the fact that I had tore the gas stove on the wall, I tipped over the refrigerator, I busted up all the furniture, I punched out windows, I beat up my wife. In my mind, it had nothing at all to do with drinking. This was all my wife's fault. If she kept her nagging goddamn mouth shut, it never would have happened, because I seen that happen with my father. She'd be nagging him and nagging when he's drinking, I said, "Ma, leave him alone, for Christ's sake." So my 2 older sisters said the same thing. Leave him alone, you're pissing him off. And he was a little Irishman, but if you pissed him off, oh, Jesus Christ. And so naturally she pissed him off. And this is what I did. I blamed it on I blamed it on my temper. I blamed it on her nagging or this, that, and the other. But again, I'm protecting my right to drink. Always protecting my right to drink. And there was another occasion I got whacked out. I ended up in traction. I come to a couple of days later, and I says, if I didn't take them last couple of drinks, things would have been different. I found out since coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, if I had had the first drink, I never would have been in that particular situation in the first place. I would have had sense enough to run away, etc., etc. There was another occasion. My wife was expecting our second child. It came that time. I took her up to the hospital. I says, "Look, hon, I'll come back to see you this afternoon." Now, I honest to God meant to go back to see my wife that afternoon, but I went to a joint. I started drinking. 1 o'clock came. I said, "I'll go up at 2 o'clock. I says, "I'll go up at 3 o'clock. I'll go up at 4. Procrastination. This is part and parcel of the disease of alcoholism. Christ, I didn't know nothing about obsession, compulsion, compassion. These weren't words in my vocabulary, for Christ's sake. But I did know when I picked up a drink, I would beg, borrow, or steal to keep drinking. So when I arrived at the hospital, a couple of days later, I walked in the room, and she looked at me, and she's crying. And when she cried like that, my feelings was getting hurt inside. And I loved my wife very, very much. I've known her since she was 16. She was my sweetheart. She was in the nursing home. We was separated for about 40 years. I got divorced after 25 years in AA. I still loved her. I went up to the nursing home, and I told her that I loved her. And she says, "I know." And I says, "I'm very sorry for all the shit I did." She says, "Jimmy, you've already made amends to all of these things." And I knew she was dying, and she was a good soul. I looked around the room, and there was three other women, like I said, in a room with money tables. He had cards, flowers, and gifts, and the husband was visiting him. It was a very happy, joyous occasion. And I looked at these guys, and I wanted to jam it up with these guys. I wanted to tear the eyes out of their head. Not because I was tough or crazy, because these guys were doing the things that I wanted to do. I loved her, like I say, very much. I wanted to be a decent husband, and I wanted to be a decent father. But I was suffering from a progressive illness, and I didn't know it. I did not know that I was an alcoholic. I knew that I was a badass, even without booze in me. I knew I was a badass, and I knew that I was a drunk, but I didn't know anything, nothing about the disease of alcoholism. There was another occasion, my son Jimmy, he's sober 41 years today. He was a little boy. He came into the room and he says, Daddy, there's something wrong with Kevin. Something wrong with Kevin. I went into the room and I picked up my son Kevin, who was 10 months old. And I knew that Kevin was dead. I had seen death before. It was no stranger to me, but it never quite had the effect that this did. During the course of events, I was taking a member of the clergy. At that particular time, I took the fourth and fifth step of Alcoholics Anonymous. Unbeknownst to me, I took a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself, and I confessed to God, myself, and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. I did this to the best of my ability at the time. I caught pleas for things with this priest that I figured I was taking to the grave with me that no other human being would know about. But I was motivated by hurt and pain that I had way down deep inside of my soul. And I was willing to do anything. And in those days, we used to take pledges, and the priest suggested I take a pledge for 3 months. And I took a pledge for 3 months, and I swore in the grave of my son that I wouldn't drink for 3 months. And in 2 weeks' time, I was drinking again. And when many a time I drank after that, I couldn't get drunk. What I mean by that, I was losing my body functions. I would fall down. I'd be aware. But I would always be aware of the hurt and the pain that I had inside of my soul. Booze stopped working for me. And in those days, I drank for oblivion. I would drink so much wine, and I would pray to God that I would pass out and not walk around in a blackout. So on one of these occasions, I'm bumming around the city of Peabody. I couldn't go in any bars in Peabody, Salem. I had no friends left, no fight left inside me, a piece of shit, nothing. I was doing a lot of drinking that I didn't want to do, and I didn't have anything to drink. God, I was dying. I needed a drink. And I remember my father had a room in a house of horrors where the Dunkin' Donuts is in a square. I went over to his room, kicked in his door, and he's laying in the bed, and he's mumbling a rosary piece that he has. And I says, I need a drink. Give me some wine. I started to drink the wine, and I called him all kind of bastards because he didn't go to my son's funeral. And he looks at me, and he says, son, he says, why don't you stop your drinking before you end up just like me? And I says, how? How do I stop? Because I had tried hundreds and hundreds of times to stop drinking. My problem was stop drinking. I couldn't stop drinking. And the only answer he had is, you're young. You're young. As if being young gave someone the strength and the power to stop drinking. And I says, I can't. He says, oh God, no. Not you, too. Before I left the room that night, I tore a rosary piece out of his hands. I threw the rosary piece at him. I spit at him. I slapped him in the face a couple of times. I wished that he was dead. 2 weeks later, my sister Ann got a hold of me. She says, Dad's dead. I remember how I thought, and I remember how I felt. I was glad that my father was dead. And my thinking at the time was, who the hell's going to say anything about my drinking now? If anyone's got an excuse to drink, it's me. At this point in time, I didn't need any excuse to drink. I was totally obsessed with alcohol. Like I say, I was doing a lot of drinking that I didn't want to do, and I couldn't stop. I'm down in my mother's house, and she says, will you go to his room and get his belongings? I went over to the room, it was padlocked. I had to go over to the station, and there was a captain here. When he was a patrolman, he used to arrest me for doing all kind of vandalism and breaking an entrance and stuff like that. And all my friends was in reform school, and it was one hot summer night. The friggin' mosquitoes was big, and there was all kind of gypsy moths out there. And that's them. They look like spider web nets on the trees, and it rushed, and it would squirt the trees with the poison they had. It was like a white milk or something, you know what I mean? And he stopped at Alberghini's, and he says, he gave me some money. He says, go in and get a couple of Moxies. Moxies for you young people is tonic, like Coke is today, you know? And I gets 2 Moxies, and I gets in a back seat, and he has one, I have one. Then he turns around, and he looks at me, and he says, listen, your mother's in this country. She hasn't got a soul over here. She's all by herself. Your old man's in jail again. My father was always in jail, you know, since a little kid, you know. And he says, why don't you? And they didn't have all this fucking welfare and all these fucking giveaways then. They didn't have them. If the son of a bitch was going to give you a food order or something for welfare, they wanted to get in your pants or get in one of your kids' pants or something. And he says, we help your mother out, he says. And there was no jobs in those days, for Christ's sake. But I got a job on a farm, 10 cents an hour. 10 cents an hour, I got a job on the farm. And then I got a job selling newspapers. I sold newspapers. I set pins up at a candle pin bowling alley. There was no machines. We used to shave the pins, and we used to set them up, you know. And sometimes we'd wax that, the alleys, like, you know what I mean? We'd go back when no one was there. We'd do that. And naturally, we broke in every fucking place that I worked. I worked in a laundry. I worked in a cafeteria. Last place I worked was a leather factory, and they had a big sign as big as I was. I was a little skinny kid, and it says "No child labor" under 14. But we didn't work for the manufacturer. We worked for the guys, you know, the employees. We worked for the guys, and for every piece of leather that they produced, they'd get so much money. And then Thursday would come, and they'd come around with a tray with the envelopes in it. And the guys would empty the envelope. They give you all the change. They keep the bills, you know. But if they had a good week, some guy would slip you a buck for a good week. And I would always split it with my mother so she could buy some flour or stuff like that, and to make some dumplings and bread or whatever she had to do, you know. And what my mother didn't know was, like I said, me and my friend broke into every place I worked, every gas station, school, church. We broke in everything like that. We tried to break in one time when the Russians, I think it was Russian or Polish, and we went to go down his store and break in, and he started shooting at us, and we're both laughing. I got my nuts off. I used to like the thrill, the rush of all of that shit, anyway, so we learned not to do that. So here's this cop over there in the station, and I hadn't seen him for years and years and years. And then we talked for a long time. He was a good guy. I met some bad cops. I met some bad cops. And this guy was a good guy. He had fucking heart. He was a good man. The landlord came. He had called the landlord. The landlord came in a rooming house. And then he got a patrolman, and he says, take the kid over there, let him take what he wants. So they unlocked the door, and I went in, and he had a bureau, and he had one chair and a bed. That's what he had. There was a pile of dirty clothes on the floor. I opened the drawers. There was nothing in the fucking drawers. And on the drawer and a bureau, they had a mirror all the time. And he took the crucifix that I had tore up and threw at him. He took the crucifix and put it on the mirror, and I says, I wonder what Mom would want. I took the faded blue suit, the overcoat, soft hat, pair of shoes, and the little crucifix he put on the mirror. I brought it to my mother's house and laid it on the couch. She picked up the old coat and a crucifix. She cried. She started saying, "Oh my God, no. He was a good man, but he drank too much." Now, my mother and father came from across the pond from Ireland to start a life in this country. For Christ's sakes, he was 51 years old, 96 pounds, and he was dead. He was dead. I didn't know that that's young in those days. I didn't know that he was young. I didn't know that my mother was a young woman in those days at 50 or 51. And she loved him. I couldn't conceive of how she could love him, but she loved him, and that's all she had. And in my drinking, I would find myself in a cemetery at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I go to my son's grave, and I say, "Why? Now you got to remember that booze wasn't working for me. I didn't get high anymore. Like I would just drink for oblivion, drink so much wine, and I'd pass out and not walk around, you know. And I always bargained with the squad. I was raised Irish Catholic. I made my communion, and I didn't go to. I ain't been back to a church since. Life kicked the shit out of me, and I fought back. And I wanted to believe. I wasn't an atheist. The churches used to be open 24/7. We used to go into the churches. I did anyway, and I would kneel before the statues and say, "Help me, God." I was crying, "Help me, help me, help me." And so here I was at the gravesite doing the same thing, and I'm pissed. And I says, I've asked you all the time, give me a fucking sign. You know, you're rotten, and then, you know, and I started swearing, and I started praying to the devil, and I did all of this shit, you know, and then I went to my father's grave, and it was at my father's grave that something happened. The man that I thought I hated so very, very much, I found out that I loved him too. I didn't know that. And feelings started to well up inside of me that I had pushed down for years. I started to remember when I was a young boy, before the disease of alcoholism took a hold in him, you know what I mean? And he was a farmer from Ireland. We always had a garden with a few chickens running around and this, that, and the other. And he taught me about how things grow, and he'd tell me stories about leprechauns. And he'd sing, oh God, he'd sing Irish songs and stuff like that. And all these mushy feelings came up inside of me, and I didn't want to have them. I didn't want to have them because they hurt. And if I met an old crony, I couldn't tell him about that. I couldn't tell him the many times that my beautiful, beautiful wife stood in front of me and screeched and cried to the top of her lungs, as, my God, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I wish you was dead. And I'd stand there with a smirk on my face saying that I didn't care, but I honest to God cared. I wanted to put my arms around her. I wanted to kiss her gently on the cheek. I wanted to be so gentle and tender and kind, and I couldn't do it. There was another part of me inside. I wanted her to hurt. God, if she only knew the pain that I had inside of my soul, she wouldn't be doing and saying the things she did. These are the things that killed me. No one ever had to teach me how to be a wise guy. Jealousy, possessiveness, lust, fear, revenge, manipulation, control. I've known these things as a child. The thing that killed me was love, was caring. I was afraid to love. Every time I loved, I got my heart ripped out. Every time I trusted someone, I got double-crossed. This is the way before I drank, while I drank, love was the power to rip my heart out today. But I still love. I heard about Alcoholics Anonymous, the old Salem group, 75 years old. I heard about Alcoholics Anonymous in the early 40s. We started from the Lynn City Hall group. A bunch of the guys from PB Salem, Beverly Danvers got together, and they said, let's start a club in Salem. And this is what they did. Eventually, they met in Salem, started a club. There was a guy there, one of the co-founders, Jerry Crowley. he took my father to AA and then they took him to Salem too. And so him and Dad Cottle got down my house one time, and I said, "Man, what some guys doing here?" You know, because we never had no goddamn visitor or anything in my house. Like, she says, "They're your father's friends. They're drunks. They belong to a club, and they rent the bus. They go see the Boston Braves and the Red Sox play, and then they go and play cards." That's all she knew. But that's what I heard. That's the first seed was planted. The seed of Alcoholics Anonymous was planted then. And I would say probably I was around 12 years old, 13 years old, something like that. Anyways, the next time I heard about it was a friend of mine got out of prison after 6 years. He took me to my first meeting in 1953. I come back to Alcoholics. That didn't do any good. We went to that meeting in Salem with a bus turn across. They had bouncers, and you had to have bouncers. There's barrooms all over the place, you know what I mean? In Salem, we used to have bouncers. I was a bouncer, had a whole bunch of people bouncers. So so I heard about it then, and in the fall, in the fall of 1958, I come back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and since December 24th of 1958, I haven't had a drink, a pill, of a joint of mine, a mood-altering drug. Now, the most important thing I heard, and it's very important if you're new or coming back to Alcoholics Anonymous, try to identify with the speaker. Now, when I say identify with the speaker, I'm talking about identify with the thinking they have and with the feelings they have. Like these guys that helped me, I told them my violent temper and how I blamed it. They says that's a disease of alcoholism. You know, you blame it on your wife, your temper, or this, that, or the other, and all this shit. And I learned all this in Alcoholics Anonymous. They told me about this disease, and there was a guy from Marblehead. His name was Phil Stevens, and everyone used to say to the disease of alcoholism in those days. Some people would do it for 5 minutes, some people 10 minutes, and everyone had a different version of it. Like, you know, that's still the way it is today, basically. And then of course you'd have the intellectuals that try to, you know, but that shit didn't hit. It had to be something for a guy like me. It had to hit me in the belly, and if it didn't hit me in the belly, it didn't make any difference. All the logic and stuff you could throw at me, and they Phil Stevens was that way. He had something he could touch people with. I think it was the higher power worked through him and we touched people. And when he spoke, I don't remember a word he said afterwards, nothing. But I know this, I belong here. This is my place, and I followed him around. I was so happy every time someone would ask him to describe the disease, because I couldn't do it. And I would listen, and I would listen to other people. I hear the people mention Don Kennedy. Don Kennedy used to talk to me. He had one leg. He was beautiful. And there were so many people to describe disease. Anyway, and that's what I'm going to do now. Try to identify with the people's feelings and their thinking, how they thought and how they felt, not the things they did. Because you could live 2 or 3 lifetimes and never do some of the things that the speaker has done. And they told me that if I was an alcoholic, that it wasn't my fault. There's no blame for having the disease of alcohol, and there's no blame or shame if you're coming back here for the second time, for the 23rd time, or for the 105th time, or for the 500th times. This is a daily reprieve that we have. And if we're fortunate enough to stay sober a day at a time, an hour at a time, a minute at a time, that's the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. So keep your ass coming to Alcoholics Anonymous and you're going to feel guilt and shame. That goes with it. That goes with it. Sometimes that's a motivator that helps you get off your ass and go to a meeting. So they told me that I had a threefold disease. It was physical, mental, and spiritual. And they told me that the physical part of this disease, it wasn't the shakes, or whether the dry heave, cirrhosis of the liver, or losing a limb in an automobile accident. They told me that the physical part of the disease is that my body chemistry is different than a normal drinker. I have an allergy toward alcohol. When I take one drink of alcohol and put it in my system, it sets up a craving, a phenomenon of craving. And I have to drink to feed this physical compulsion. I didn't need 30 meetings in 30 days to understand that. Christ, I know long before AA that it was the first drink that got me drunk. But I didn't know why. When they told me in here it's because I had this physical allergy toward alcohol, I bought it. I bought it emotionally and intellectually. It explained to me why I drank like I drank. Now, when booze was working for me, there were many times I went into a joint with the guys. I felt the balls. I just wanted a couple of drinks to keep this feeling. Some of the guys I was with, they could go to work, they could go home to supper. Once I picked up a drink, I would beg, borrow, or steal to keep drinking. There's some people that can hear my voice. You can understand what I'm saying. Not up here, in here. And you can understand what I'm saying. You take one drink, put it into your system. This phenomenon of craving starts, coupled with this mental obsession, you proceed to want to drunk. There's other people here, they can't identify with that. They're the type of people they can nip. They can take 1, 2, or 3 drinks, or like this for 2, 3, 4 months, whatever their particular pattern is. But if they have this allergy toward alcohol, eventually this phenomenon of craving starts, coupled with this mental obsession, these people proceed to want to drunk. They told me that the mental part of this disease, it wasn't hallucinating, whacking people out, or making incoherent sounds. They says the mental part of the disease of alcoholism is the obsession that he or she has with alcohol. And the alcoholic has no defense against the first drink. A doctor can go up to a heavy drinker and say, hey, look, you got cirrhosis. If you drink again, you're going to die. Loved ones in the family can say, if you continue to drink like this, your ass is going on the street. We're not going to put up with this type of behavior. The employer can say you're going to lose your job. The law can say we're going to incarcerate you. This is sufficient reason for the heavy drinker to stop drinking. They're going to have some difficulty, but you bet your ass they're going to stop drinking. Now you say the same thing to the alcoholic. The alcoholic doesn't want to lose emotional security. They don't want to have financial insecurity. They don't want to be incarcerated. They don't want to lose their health. And from the bottom of our hearts, so many times have we said, I swear to God, I will never, never drink again. And you mean it. But once that idea of a drink comes into the mind of the alcoholic, no matter what fence they put up against it, it gives way. This is the mental part of the disease. It is not the crazy things you did when you was drinking. Because if you pump enough booze into a normal person, they're going to lose their body functions and act like a baboon, just like the rest of us. Again, the mental part of this disease is the obsession that he or she has with alcohol, and the alcoholic has no defense against the first drink. There is a period of time in the alcoholic's drinking when they do have a defense against that first drink. Love will help you to stay sober for a period of time. Fear, physical activity, working 2 or 3 jobs, going to the gym and pumping iron. There's many things that will help you to stay sober for a period of time. But once that idea of a drink comes into the mind of the alcoholic, no matter what defense they put up against it, it gives way. This is the mental part of the disease. Most people, they go up and they touch a hot stove. They don't have to make an intellectual decision to pull their hand away. Our Creator built into the human organism a defense mechanism to protect it. It's called self-preservation. We lose this basic instinct with the disease of alcoholism. If you were an alcoholic sitting out here and you can hear my voice, you are bent on self-destruction. You may not know it, but you're bent on self-destruction. And it doesn't make any difference whether you do it driving a car going in the bar and act like Attila the Hun, or drink or drugging yourself to death. This disease is out to destroy you. And the spiritual part of this disease, when you mention spiritual around the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous, people immediately think of heaven, hell, sin, virtue, God, the devil. This is the way we've been brought up in this society. What we're talking about basically is a loss or lessening of one's own particular set of values, the code that each and every one of us live by as individuals. We all have a different code that we live by in the street. What's obscene and offensive to some people sitting in the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous is not obscene and offensive to other people sitting in the halls of AA. The trouble usually starts on one-to-one relationships in groups like this in countries all over the world, when one person or one group imposes their will on someone and says, my way is right, your way is wrong. You have to do it my way. Another thing about the loss or lessening about it, there was a period in my drinking like there was in everyone's drinking. You can always put their finger on someone else. And man, if I ever get that bad, if I ever stoop that low, the time comes, the time goes. You can't put the finger on anyone. You did it all. You broke every rule in the book. And when you arrive at that point in time, it doesn't make any difference anymore. Nothing makes any difference anymore. They told me if I was an alcoholic, I'd be an alcoholic until the day I die. We have no cure for the disease of alcoholism and Alcoholics Anonymous. What we do have in here is a daily reprieve. I was told I could arrest this disease one day at a time. And sometimes you got to break the day down into an hour, a minute, or a second at a time. You hear so much today about recovery, recovery, recovery. I've recovered from the direct results of drinking alcohol. I don't have blackouts anymore. I don't lose my equilibrium on kind of drinking and drugging. I don't have the wet of the dry heaves. I don't have the shakes. I have recovered from these things. I have not recovered from the disease of alcoholism. I sit before you, 63 years, a little over 63 years of sobriety. I haven't had a drink, a pill, or a joint, a mind, a mood altering drug in all that time. And I have the allergy as I sit here. And what I was taught in Alcoholics Anonymous, and what I believe, and it isn't up here, it's in here, you just know it, is that as long as I don't take that first drink, it doesn't set up that phenomenon of craving, that compulsion. So the problem becomes that first drink. Not my feelings, not my character defects. Prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, my feelings got me drunk. My character defects got me drunk. And I was told the only thing that can get you drunk is that first drink. For me, it's a drink, a pill, or a joint, a minor mood altering drug. That's what it is. That's what it is for me. And here's one of them goddamn psychic cocks again. So the alcoholic is bent on self-destruction. The alcoholic is bent on self-destruction. Every one of you sitting out there that can hear my voice, if you are an alcoholic, you are bent on self-destruction. Because we want relief. We can't get it from chemicals anymore, or booze. We can't get it with no degree of safety. There are some people that can take a nip still and then they go down. Like, I can't identify with that. But we need relief. How the hell are we going to get the relief? We're going to get the relief by doing the things that we can get relief out of. We all have a different predominant fault and or character defect. For some people, it's gambling. Some it's sex. Some it's eating. Some it's control. Some it's religion. Some it's politics. Some it's shopping. You can go on and on and on. Or like me, putting yourself in life-threatening situations. And you run these feelings into the ground. They cause a lot of troubles outside there. And you don't see that you can't see that this is the insanity that precedes the first drink. All of these things we're doing is the insanity to drink. It wants to get us so goddamn down on ourselves, and the guilt and the fucking shame and the want to fucking kill and all this fucking stuff inside. They can't see that. And there comes a point where these character defects stop working. You don't get any pleasure out of them anymore. You don't get no good feelings out of them anymore. And this is what happened to me. I tried everything to get relief. Everything. The last two things to go was violence and sex. I had to sit with myself. I've only had three relationships in my whole life. I dealt with hookers because I didn't have to get emotionally involved with them, you know. And it can kill you. Fucking it killed me sober. Relationship. 30 fucking years into a relationship. And you know something? Every woman I was with, I loved. I loved very much. I think of them today, and I don't wish them any harm. And someone put it on me a while back, and he says, would you help? You know, this last one, would you help her? She's you know, she's a live one, like, you know what I mean? She got problems. And I had to think. And yes, I would help. I wouldn't give her any money or anything like that, but you can bet your ass I'll do what I always did for her. I always try to take her to meetings and help her to stay sober. But I could never live with anyone else anymore. I am so used to being by myself, and I love myself. I never thought I could go out to lunch by myself, to breakfast by myself. I do all of that. I enjoy it very much. I've tried taking a couple women out in AA, and and we held hands. It just didn't fucking work out. It just didn't work out, because what came up to me then was, Jesus Christ, you're going to turn into a fucking animal again. Some guy fucking looks like you want to split his fucking head open or something like that, you know. So very jealous and possessive. All these feelings come up. So anyway, you got to sit with your shit. Now, when I say sit with your shit, I meditated. I learned to meditate. I've been meditating for 40 years. I've tried all different forms, Zen, Buddhism, the whole goddamn thing. And there's no ritual to what I tried. All the rituals, the candles, the incense, the mantras, everything. And they're looking at the candles, lighting, and all of this shit. I tried every conceivable thing there was. I am back to what I was taught in AA. Like an old dog. You see an old dog, you got a dog, they don't feel good. Their tail between their legs, they curl up in a fucking corner, they sit there and they lay there, and they just, you know, they don't want to be bothered, they don't feel good, or they're depressed. But this is what happened. This is what would happen to me. And when these my biggest problem in my whole life was when I got sober. Really, when I got sober, I was struggling to stay sober. I wanted to stay sober desperately, but I was most miserable son of a bitch in the fucking world. I was hurting people I loved, doing things I didn't want to do, had feelings I didn't want to have. I didn't want to be the bastard. I wasn't doing the things that I was doing, and I couldn't change. But what happened in here was, I The guys taught me a prayer, and the prayer was this: God help me, I'm a drunk. 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 I says, I don't believe in God. They says, we don't give a shit whether you believe in God or not. Are you willing to go to any lengths? And I said, yes. Then say this prayer. It becomes a working part of your unconscious mind. And this is what I did. This is how I was staying sober. How does someone like me with 20 years sober, living the same way I did drunk, doing the same things? I wasn't drinking. That's the only thing. What was different was I was coming to meetings and I was talking to guys and girls in AA with the transmission line going. I came to believe that we have a power in AA. I don't know what God is. I don't know. I've tried. I made 9 retreats. I read books on philosophy, theology, psychology, searching. I was always thrown back to myself. To me, God is some kind of energy or frequency. You understand? Or psychic thing. It's just an energy. It's something like that. And you this I believe. It's hard to explain. I believe. I don't know how I believe in this God from my own belly inside. Something has happened to me inside these last 15 years. I was ashamed of the feeling I got. Not because it's bad, it's good. It's good. I have no shame today. I broke every fucking rule in the book. I have no shame. I have no guilt. To the best of my ability, I made fucking amends to everyone. But it's feelings of joy sometimes that make me so grateful that I'm sober. 90% of the time, I'm a very well-adjusted psychopath. 10% of the time, I'm out there. Now, what I mean by that is when I say I'm out there, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in nothing. I'm paranoid. Everything is a conspiracy. Well, in the past, what would happen is my guts would go, my head would go, and it'd last for all the time. Now, when that happens to me during these past 12 years, especially lately, the head don't go and the guts turn off. I lived by my guts. I lived by my instincts for so fucking long. I could walk into a fucking store today, crowded with fucking people. Someone's looking at me. I'll turn around, look directly at that son of a bitch. Pick him out just like that. That's, some people say, oh, he's psychic. You said, yeah. That's very fucking painful. Very, very painful. Very, very fucking painful to feel other people's feelings. And that's what happened to me. I started to feel other people's fucking pain. Other people's pain. I am very grateful that I know I'm fucking going on a little bit here, and I don't know why, but if you're new or coming back to Alcoholics Anonymous, try to keep this in your mind. The miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous is not serenity, peace of mind, or peace of soul, or keeping the 10 commandments, the laws of society. This is good if you want peace of mind and peace of soul. It contributes to it. But the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous is physical sobriety. If you doubt me, look into the eyes of someone you love. Husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, child, best friend. They're all fucking juiced up. All juiced up, they're not in there. You'd give anything for them to be physically sober. That's the miracle of AA. People are sitting at meetings like this. They want to kill themselves. They want to kill others. They want to drink. They want to drug. Why? Because they lost someone they loved. Because they lost a pet. Because a bonded relationship has fallen apart. But they're not doing any of them things. They're staying sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. They are the miracle. This is the miracle. The feelings will pass in most cases. Even for some of you sick bastards on here, and I know there's a lot of sick bastards on here that's been sober for years, that there is times during the day when you laugh. This is all pointed out to me. There was times during the day that you laugh, you listen to music, you get stung by a fucking bee, or everything happens. You know what I mean? But 24/7, it's not all pain. It really isn't. Really, today it's so beautiful just to look at the clouds. I go by myself and just look at the clouds and look at the birds, the insects, everything. It's just, it's that loneliness, that fucking deep ass loneliness that ate the soul out. It's not there, and it isn't a question of being alone. I know what being alone is. It's that loneliness, and that's gone. That's gone. Jesus God, I'm so grateful that that's gone, you know. And then I have a few people in my life today that I bond with, just very few, but I bond with them. And it's male, female.